Hi, I'm Laurie with To the Trade, and I have Shannon Ggem here. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Laurie.
So excited to have you back on the show. I think you're our first repeat guest. So exciting. It's we like to really talk to some of the best designers in the country, of which you are. You were just recognized recently as one of the Kitchen Design Innovators of the Year. So exciting for you. Yay. Tell everyone a little bit about you and your practice, where you are, what you do. I'm a big fan, so I'll just get that out there.
I'm a huge fan of you in the interior design community, and I learned so much from these podcasts and from our community in general. I'm just so grateful for the resource, and I rely on it heavily. I am in Los Angeles. We're based in Los Angeles, up north near Malibu, in the mountains of Malibu, we say. And I work all over the country. So I have a very special area of a lot of work, which is the Northeast. So I work in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, Philadelphia is a market for us. And it's a wonderful thing to travel across the country. Also all the normal interior design cities, Park City, all of those. So
Yeah.
we have a great time doing it out of our Los Angeles office. And then I have tons of local clients, of course. It's just a really wonderful place to practice interior design because people come here with creativity and optimism and they're looking toward the future. So it makes it a really awesome market where people want to try things and do things and they're excited. So we have a lot
I
of here.
I think it's a brilliant move. First of all, you were a Massachusetts girl moving to California all those years ago and to become an actress, which was such a cool story. Like, how brave of you. I was like so chicken at 18. I would never think of like doing something like that. And found your love of interior design. Of course you're doing it across by coastline. I'm sure the clients in the New England area are so excited that you still have those like New England sensibilities of the antiques and the found thing objects, but also bringing that cool California coastal vibe to the situation. I'm sure that makes you very popular.
I have a great time with it. It's just really awesome to work in the vintage and the antique because people don't know how to do that. So it goes both ways, right? Like I get a lot of East Coast transplants here in LA, many, many.
Right?
And they feel, and I get a lot of Midwesterners as well because they feel that sensibility and they're not seeing it out there in the real estate market, especially. So because houses get flipped and then they're just kind of, you
Ugh.
know, innocuous.
Yes.
So we try
Yeah.
to add character back in or we try to imbibe a new build with character, vintage looking character, which is really a wonderful part of the practice and so fun to do. Like we'll take a light fixture and we'll swag it as if someone used to have furnishing in a different position. And it
Right.
kind of tricks if you have a house that's being built in a traditional style, it definitely is one of those tricks that just brings it home like, "Oh, is this old? Oh, am I in a remodeled space?" I think it's fun to do stuff like that.
I
Just
think that you always have had that eye. You've always made I really encourage all of you listening to go to Sharon's website because she, does beautiful work. Look through her portfolio. Just check it out because it's magical. You have a lot of magical spaces that you have offered for your clients over time. I am a big fan. I think you do beautiful work. You really do. And I'm a work junkie. Like I look at all your portfolios just so you know. This is the first thing I do when I see a new designer. I'm like, what do they have? What do they do?
having the best time, and the main principle of it is to connect people to people and nature so that people are part of nature, right? But it benefits the human body in ways that we can now measure. They're measured. So it makes our clients feel better. It makes them perform better. It makes them less stressed. It makes them more able to rest. It's just a wonderful thing to imbibe. I call it the biophilic practices, right? But some people call it dopamine design. And there's many
Yeah.
different names for kind of the same set of principles, but they are the evidence-based wellness principles that connect your client back to nature and the other human beings who make the things in their home. It's funny when you have that first conversation with clients about who someone made their toilet. Someone made that,
Yeah.
someone designed it. Someone made it on a factory floor. There's owners of that company. It's a real thing. Everything around you, a human hand has touched, and that is a beautiful part of the fact that homes are still handmade.
Right. Yeah. And that the real people, exist in this world that have generations of craftsmanship behind them. Maybe their father worked at that same factory. Maybe their grandfather worked at that same factory. Those stories still exist in our world of design. And it's just lovely to hear all of the brands that have these amazing stories that bring so much to our world of design, and that how many of them really pour their heart and soul into the products that we are specifying on a regular basis. I mean, you cannot get beyond it sometimes when you're just listening to how, Curry and Company and Robert Curry came up with the light fixture. You're just like, "Oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing." And the generations of people that have worked with them, and how much they care about their employees. Like, you love it. It just makes you so much happier to be able to sell when those product lines are behind you. And is that part of your process when you do get out there with those clients? It's really digging into the why it's so special?
Yes, very much so. And it's kind of, part of taste too. If you think about the word taste and what it implies the ability to see kind of the effort and the work that went into a thing and differentiate it. So it's a big part of working with clients is telling them the story of the things that they're getting because it's beyond just like, oh, look, we're going to put a thing on a thing, or we're going to walk into the big box store and buy whatever. We're not. We're gonna really know those stories. I love that you brought up curry because that's one of the more beautiful stories of resilience in a company over time and of taking care of employees and of, ensuring quality of life for everyone that works there and staying in it, staying right there in it. And there are so many choices for brands and they can go so many different directions with how they're going to do things. And I just think that's a really great example of a human-centered story, a story of caring about the quality of life of the people.
I think they absolutely do, and I have heard that many times, though, through our industry too. There are so many brands that, just generations of people who've dug in and tried to bring a sense of place. Like, I was at Gabby last summer, I think, and we were talking. They do an annual like antiques tour, and then they bring a bunch of antiques back to their showroom, and how they negotiate and how they, over years have developed these relationships with different antique owners, stall owners, and authenticating for that design client and really having to dig in and know who to trust and know how they're getting the right prices for the clients. And they really don't make much on the antique part of it, but they do it because it adds that sense of place to the other furniture that they're bringing into market, which is so smart, right? I mean, I love those stories. I just like geek out.
I got to do a big project in Philadelphia and we got to use antiques and it was so fun because first of all, one of the best organized giant antique stores I have ever been to. 5 stories, tens of thousands of square feet, and rows, chairs like 5 high, insert.
Right.
So very, very big overwhelm for clients, but for a designer, it was like heaven. Every single thing has a QR code. Every single thing has an aisle number and space number. So, and it's all online, every piece. So you can look online and then say, I got to come check it for my client. And then you walk through, um, and it's perfectly right there and you get to see every single thing. So that's a pretty incredible thing. But the wonderful part was we were in Philadelphia and I got to source things that are from Philadelphia. I mean, that is so special.
So special. I mean, the history that you're adding to that person's home, is so amazing. And I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into the topic that I think is really interesting for our listeners, and that is how designers use empathy and how that can help a designer in the process of design, really getting to know the client, really understanding who they are, almost embodying them so that you can make decisions on their behalf and and understand their desires and their fears and their frustrations and how they come to decisions and really working that nuance. I think designers have to navigate that so delicately because there's so much money on the line, so many emotions on the line. And then on the flip side of that is maybe getting too beyond our own boundaries in that process because we're digging in so deep. Now we care about their problems and care about their home probably more than we do our own because we're in service of someone else for such a long period of time. So I really want to dig into that from your perspective because you're such a great emotional led designer and I want to know how has empathy helped you in your career? Like just let's start from there.
Okay. So for me, empathy is so high. It's just that I'm very attuned to that. And I feel sometimes like I think that I share this with a lot of people, a lot of designers actually, that I feel like, oh my God, I can basically read their minds. I can
Right.
basically read their mind.
Yeah.
So they're telling you the thing, and then you go, she doesn't really want that, but she's saying that she likes it because she doesn't want me to feel bad, So it's given me a couple of key phrases early in my career that helped me get past that with clients because that can be a real hindrance to your hours. You can really rack up the hours reflecting something to a client that they were people pleasing. They thought that you wanted them to like. So you can burn so much of their time and that hurts them in the end. So what I say straight out and, from the very beginning is I'm going to show you things that are other people's work, that are drawings that I've created, drawings that my office has created. You cannot hurt my feelings. I will never have my feelings hurt by your personal preference. I just won't. I won't. And it is true. I didn't, I'm not the artist who created the tile that I'm showing or the thing that I'm showing. So in one way I have that separation, but also when it's my own drawings, it can be a little bit of a bummer. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it is not my house. And I really do need them to feel so comfortable in being honest with me. I really need that. So I say, you cannot hurt my feelings. And then I say, let's talk about ranked on a scale. So often you're working with a couple. I work with a lot of couples and it's a huge creative endeavor. And it's like really exciting and fun. And it's something they're doing together. And they're going to spend weekends going to showrooms and seeing things, or at least looking at our emails to them or whatever. So I just feel like that's part of their process and that's fine. So what I like to say is, let's make sure we're using a ranking that if you don't like something that your partner loves, that I know what level of each, because if it's just a pillow fabric and you don't like it, level 3, and they love it, level 10, you're going to have that pillow. Come on. You want to do
Right.
that for your partner?
Right.
So we need to know kind of what within the language, what does that mean? I don't like it. I don't know. Do you not like it a 10? Do you not like it a 2? Because a 2, maybe. And then the other great thing that I think is a much more empathetic approach is I loved my watercolor days. I watercolored for clients a lot, and that was wonderful. But I think, having a controversial opinion, which is I love the renderings. I love the photorealism renderings. I've been at it since the beginning of the renderings.
You did. Yeah.
So I've always had it in my practice. And I used to, for certain clients, I will watercolor them still. I'll render it for myself and I'll go, oh, and then I'll go, oh, that's a lot of decisions all at once. Like there's 1,000 things in this photo. And then I will take my hand and repaint it because I want a more kind of basic level decision. Because too many, if you're showing 1,000 things, then they're like, oh my God, I like this, I don't like that, it's like too many
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But
It
if
can
you
get
say,
distracting and then it can cloud the whole thing, right?
so sometimes you have to reel that back, and that's
So you're softening it is a skill. Like that is something that you're using as a tactic with the client to almost soften the decision-making process too. Like if it does looks a little bit more dreamy, it's a little bit less harsh in the reality world as a decision, right?
I mean,
So
it's
is
the
that
vibe. It's more of a
yeah,
like, is this your vibe? Is this the vibe you're going for?
right.
That's so much more bite size, like early in a design process, because you don't want to come in like, here's 1 million things I think.
Yeah.
I don't think clients like that.
No, I think a lot of clients are we're just had a very popular discussion that happened in our community yesterday. I asked about hourly rate. A designer wrote in asking, we're trying to reevaluate for 2026. What is everyone's hourly rate? And it was really great conversation, of course, polarizing because some designers are like, that's nobody's business but mine. And then some designers are like, that's wrong to gatekeep. And that's part of what's wrong with our industry. And, just a healthy debate about that kind of thing. But one of the things I think is so interesting about it is that I think when it boils down, because of this lack of transparency, sometimes our clients are very nervous. I've talked to actual design clients when, that have used designers, and the number one thing that they say to me is that they are afraid of designers. They are afraid of you, because they don't want to be sold things they don't want. They think of it as designers are trying to sell them things and sell them what they want, and they're afraid of the home not being representative of them. And it's the funniest thing to me because it's the 100% opposite of what I know every designer wants to achieve. So I'm like, that is not what they think at all. I mean, when they're asking for budget, they're not asking for budget, and yes, there's just a client will say they're asking for the budget because they want to spend every penny. That's true, but not for the reasons you think. Like you think they want to spend every penny because that's what you're willing to spend and they want to spend every penny, but they're thinking like, okay, I have 1,000 things I need to buy with this. How much can I spend on the important stuff? Like the things you're going to sit on every day, and okay, I can spend this much of the budget on that. And then how much is left for all the other things, the components in the room? And I've got to, they're mentally calculating how much can I use for a light fixture? How much can I use for a lamp? It's a piece of the pie to them. And so, of course, they need the budget for that. But it creates this weird distrust almost that happens, that they're thinking that designers want that from them, want the budget so that they can spend it. It's true, but because they want to spend it wisely. That's the key. That's the finish of that situation. And don't you find that that's part of this like weird transparency struggle that we constantly deal with?
Yeah, it's always shocking to me, and I know it's true because it's confusing. It is confusing out there, and designers have a lot of ways of charging, and a lot of times it's by proposal, so it's very hard for clients to pick apart, like, what is the appropriate amount for me to be paying for design? What should I plan for? And it's funny, the thing about wanting to sell you things or wanting to buy things, because they don't it seems to me that right now, retail, like big retail, big corporate retail, has done a wonderful job in creating that false narrative, saying, "Oh, designers just want your money so that they can keep 3/4 of it and only, and give you a pittance back."
The reality is the opposite.
Exactly.
Reality is the opposite. I just want designers to recognize that. The reality is if you're going to big box retail, they have spent a shit ton of money on their advertising and their marketing and their showroom spaces, and they have value engineered the shit out of their product. The product is crap, but it's a pretty store. It smells really nice. They've got cute little 25-year-olds selling the thing. I'm not like knocking it. That's part of the process. Well, I am knocking it. I think designers are going to care more about what's in the product than they do about what
With
is
higher risk. I mean, truly, like, I
so
won't
much higher
sell.
risk.
First of all, I can't sell. There's a certain store that is in a lot of beautiful historic buildings and has wonderful restaurants and really charms my clients,
Restoration hardware. I'll say it.
but I can't sell it. I can't allow it to be sold. I can't have anything to do with it because I've had so many product fails.
Oh my gosh. I mean, talk to any upholsterer. I have upholsterers that won't touch it at all because of how disgusting it is. But rip it apart. Look at what the base is made out of. Look at what the filling is made out of. I had a reupholsterer that is in your area, and they said that black smoke after the fires, I think that's RH. That's what they said.
Wow.
I was I was like, "Whoa," but I
I mean,
mean,
it's just
she
bad
makes sure
news.
guys wear gas masks when if they had to reupholster an RH piece. So, I mean,
if you think all the way through it and you go, okay, here's a designer, they're independent, they don't have high overhead, they don't have a corporate jet, they don't have a penthouse, they don't have a yacht, they don't have, the things that some of these corporate companies have. And so they don't have to pay for all that. They don't have all the employees.
They don't have commercials, they don't have, like, a big staff, they don't have a big showroom, they don't have,
So
you
the
know, a
not only do they so the driver is different, and then on top of that, they don't want the liability. Like, I don't want the liability of selling anything bad. So everything I sell is fabulous and is curated by me, and often I've toured the factory. I've met the leadership. I've definitely done my due diligence because I don't want to put something in someone's house that 4 years later someone is gonna call me and say, "This thing failed." Because
right.
that's time that is
Well, you have a
uncompensated
2-year
time.
relationship with this person too. They didn't just come into your shop, buy something, and leave, and you're never gonna see them again, and you churn and burn people. You also know them. You know them intimately. You're not likely to do something that you know will cause them in any way some harm. Now, that doesn't mean things don't go wrong on a design project sometimes without a designer wanting to, but there isn't anybody that's going to care more about the outcome of how that functions for you than a designer. Like I just don't know of anyone, and I've told people this, and they get it when I start talking to them because I have even talked to design clients about this. I'm like, literally, no one cares about your house as much as a designer. Like it is the thing they care. They're wrapped up in it just as much as you are, and sometimes more. It's their portfolio, it's their calling card of how they get new business, it is their name on the line, it is their reputation in the industry, it is their art. Like, they care. You boil all of it down, a design you will not find anybody on that job that cares more that you're going to get that your house the way you want it than the designer. They don't want you to be mad at them. They don't want you to be upset. They want to deliver. And so much of that is like, and that's where I'm thinking that the emotion part of it, that empathy part of it is tricky, right? Because you do get to know your clients on such a deep level that, and at the same time you're trying to protect your boundaries as a business owner and hold the line about what is acceptable for how you are treated, how your staff is treated, how your process is guarded. And that can be really difficult when you have this relationship with this person. Has it ever been trouble for you? Have you ever had experiences where this was something that you had to work on? I mean, you've had a long career in design, and you are an empathetic person. How has that worked for you?
Yeah, of course, there's been plenty of times that I've over-delivered. I mean, over-delivery is the main way designers screw themselves, right? They estimate an amount of time, and then they give and give and give a lot more time. So that'll keep happening, and
Or shave hours? I mean, I know designers who shave hours because they're like, "Well, it did take me 10 hours to look for that light fixture, but maybe I shouldn't have taken me 10 hours to look for it, so I'm gonna charge them for 3 hours." And you're like, "But it took you 10 and it would have taken them 10." You know?
I think
And that's just part of the business sometimes, that something's hard to find that is the right proportions and the right, it's not always, sometimes it takes you 3 minutes, to find the right thing. Maybe you're like, "Oh, yeah, I know from my experience that's the right thing," but sometimes it does take longer. That's part of life.
And some of that, I think this being seasoned in it, some of that is curable by knowing what client you're serving and trying to allow them the freedom to do. If they know that they're going to be tricky about a category, sometimes clients will show up and they'll say, "Hey, I'm going to be tricky about rugs. I love rugs. I'm going to be tricky about rugs. I'm going to look, I'm going to be all over the internet. I'm going to do it all." And then I just say, "You know what? I'm just going to support them in that the best I can. And I'm not going to shave hours about it, but I'm also no longer, I have had the experience where I think of a really good one that the cure was fact. I told the client the fact and they were horrified to hear it, but I showed them 167 sconces and they said no to 167 sconces. And I said, "All right, well, this is the end of, I mean, I can't, this is what these are through my professional filter. Cause what I want is to take the client's wishes and hopes and aesthetic. And then I need to run that through my professional filter, because I can't, as we were talking about earlier, I can't sell the low end stuff. I can't sell the stuff that has a big price tag, but actually is junk. And I can't sell things that aren't going to work or going to fail. I just can't. So it has to go through the professional filter. And if I've shown you 167 in the category for, then that's literally all of them.
All of them.
It's all of them.
You've seen everything, and you didn't like any of it.
And the core was, they just needed to do it themselves. They just needed to give themselves, say, okay, well, we didn't do our due diligence. And then they looked for 3 hours and they were like, oh my God, there are millions and millions and millions of light fixtures. And I'm like, I know. And then the three things they came back with were all the wrong scale, because scale and proportion is a really big part of design, and it's really tough for clients. So they came back with pieces that were not correct. And I said, all right, well, we can have this made in the correct size and, or something like it. Or you can look back at the 167 that I showed you, and they found one in the 167. It was one of the first four, I'd like to point out.
That's always the way it is, though, right?
Yeah. I was wrapped up. I mean, I think it's a good example of being wrapped up in their kind of the noise that they were feeling as a client, because it is a noisy world. And now with the algorithm being so good at listening to us and delivering ads back to us, think of what they're getting inundated with.
I know. I think that's a huge problem for our industry. I was just going through it was an Instagram post by Dezeen, and like about the problems in our industry, and one of them was that there's just too much stuff for people to filter through. But I actually think that that's a really great opportunity for designers. I really think that because there is so much, like this dupe.com coming out, and I literally just said yesterday that they are like, we're the number one app downloaded. And yeah, that might be true, but go through it and see what it gives you when you put any for piece like put a piece of quality furniture in and show what it comes up with as the comparisons of like what it would give you as a replacement for the dupe. They're not at dupes. And you've got people on TikTok or Instagram saying these are just white labeled. They're the same thing in China. And it's like, no, they're not. No, they're not. That sofa you can buy from Walmart.com is not a Bernhardt sofa. Like, I'm sorry. That's just not the same thing. It is not. Bernhardt is not white labeling something from a Walmart. That's just not the case. You might like open it up and see if it's the same thing. Like literally take a chainsaw, open it up and look at them side by side. You're just going to be blown away at the differences. So, I mean, there's little cardboard in some of this stuff. Like, I go on Facebook Marketplace and look at how many of these pieces are for sale in like 3 years, because they're junk. They're
I've
junk.
seen stapled frames. I mean, it's
Stapled
wild
frame.
out there.
I know. And we're not talking, dry kilns. We're talking like literally
What?
cheap stapled pliers. Like, it's just it's particle board,
Rugs with moths is moths are really pervasive. So this is like a really big problem in imbibing vintage, and also getting people to accept vintage and antiques. Is one of the fears is that the piece is going to come and it's dirty and it has this, or it's got bugs or powder post beetles or whatever. And those are all real risks. Like, you kind of have to know what you're doing, So when people go, there's a huge antique rug website, and you can go to that and you can buy antique rugs. You really can. But I can tell you firsthand that I had a client who did it. She thought it was so fun. She was going to show it to me. And we were in her kitchen and she unfolded it and moths flew out. And I was like, congratulations, you now have a wool moth problem in your entire house. Like, we can't fix that. Now it's here because they just flew off. We don't know where they went. They're going to
Right.
get in drawers. They're going to get in everything. But so you have to sort of know what you're doing. I don't know. That's why our professional filters still matter. I'll tell you what I tried dupe for is the 3D warehouse that we use in rendering. People make models of products and they put them in the 3D warehouse, and you can download those into most softwares and use them in your models, which is handy dandy, but sometimes it's not a real product. So, like, what are you doing? You just, for us, we use them for scale and then we overlay, I Photoshop, so we overlay actual product that we're recommending is one of our phases of design. But sometimes I'm like, oh, I really do like that. I wish that existed. And it's often some very old discontinued piece. And it's usually by our terriers. Congratulations, our terriers. A lot of people. So, but I used dupe to try to find a particular light fixture. It didn't work. It sent me to, it sent me to Lowe's for, it was just completely wrong.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wrong in a pervasive way, like wrong in
Yeah.
a way
Well, that's
that
why I'm not worried. Like, I think this literally leads to opportunity. The fact that we have so many, and I really do believe, and, you know, I believe this. Now, I've had designers who've challenged me on this, but I believe this truly, is that the average everyday consumer doesn't really want crappy furniture. They want something that looks nice. They don't want something so expensive that they're precious about it. If certainly if not if they have a family, but they don't really want something that could harm their family with chemicals. They don't really want something the cushions are gonna be flat in 2 years or it's gonna be misshapen. And I think they don't know. I mean, I think if you went on the street as a reporter and you asked the everyday average person, what do you think a decent sofa costs? I don't think they know. I don't think they know.
could you?
And I think our industry could inform them. This is what it costs for a really decent piece, you
It would
know?
be a huge help. That's an act of empathy right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Just helping people understand what is normal to pay for a designer, the service. What is normal to pay for the pieces that a designer would put in your home, and then also have to have professional rigor. I think that I have yet to really meet a designer that doesn't have rigor around their process. So it's just the communicating it where it falls apart.
Right.
So sometimes there are designers that people think whatever they think about them, and it's just because they haven't communicated all they're doing. I mean, they're doing
Right.
so many things, like, they're
Oh
not
my gosh.
it's a trip. So
I agree. I agree.
I do a terrible job at reminding everyone that way in baked into my practice is all the wellness screening, all the human rights screening. I screen all, I mean, I have an enhanced responsibility. I'm not going to buy one sofa every 10 years. I'm going to buy 10 sofas every 1 year. So I definitely have a much bigger responsibility to the world in what I sell. So I have to know that the people are being treated correctly. I have to know that people are making a living wage and that, it's all being done on the up and up and that the materials are safe for my clients. I have to know that.
Right.
It's why those millions of sconces turned into only 167
Right.
millions. But
Right.
I can't. I don't know.
These are the sconces that, and the amount of time too is there's that conversation around, like, do you wanna pay, XYZ for a sconce? But if part of the equation is you're making the decision to spend the hours asking the designer to go find 167, which will invariably cause your price for those pieces to go up because the decision wasn't made. And that's really not in the responsibility of the designer. They can only do what they can do. They can give you the filter. They can have a great sales process where they're like, this is why, setting you up to make the decision faster. So those are responsibilities we could get better at. But I do not think that it is the designer's responsibility if you go over budget, if you are not being able to make a decision. Like, they can only do so much. You still are the person who has to decide you want what you want, right? And that's so tricky because the emotion comes back from the client on, well, you know, the designer talked me into these things, or the designer took so long deciding these things or giving me so many options. And that's kind of what emotionally what can happen to in this conversation. And I see that a lot. I had a conversation with a designer a couple of weeks ago, and it was about budget. And it was that, she gives usually 3 options and tries to get the designer like good, better, best situation. And, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes that best is like not in the budget. It's like, if you want, this is the right scale, it's the right shape, but it's really, if we want it, it's a little out of your budget. And then they get the yes, they want it. But at the end, having any resentment that the total project was over budget. Why did you not keeping me in budget? It's really difficult. I think that reign of like how they navigate that and those emotions and the buyer's remorse that can inevitably happen afterwards when you see the total number and you're like, oh wow, if you were all along. No, I've seen the opposite. I've had designers tell me literally they gave expensive options, the client always chose the expensive option, they were happy with it. But I've also seen the other side where they picked the expensive option, they went out of budget, and then they're like, why wasn't I in budget? Why didn't you keep me in budget?
That's kind of an inner boundary thing though too, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard for those who are empathetic and self-identify as empaths to not take that on, but it can't be. I mean, if everyone's signing every proposal and they are looking at every price and they know their budget better than you do, you can't take that on. You have to
No.
inner boundary against that.
Yes, yes, and
Sometimes,
protecting
and also
yourself
clients are
from
gonna
it.
have emotions.
Yeah,
In the case of a gut remodel, you're tearing up the kitchen that they made their kids' lunches in. Those kids are up and out. That's really a deep set of feelings, and it manifests in all sorts of different ways. And sometimes it might manifest in why I don't like this faucet or whatever. And then 3 months later, it's okay or it's not, and then you deal with it. But definitely, I think there's a bit of boundarying, and as long as you know that your professional practices, it's a form of empathy to have your back end really clean and to have your business well in order so that there is no secret price, there is no surprise charge, there is no, we get shipping, receiving, delivery. It's a
on tariffs.
pain. We have to tell the client up front. We consider that we have to, and then they are fine with it when it comes. But it's you gotta do it. You gotta do it.
Yeah, yeah, and also, it's okay to practice mindfulness for yourself and recognize that, that they might be having big emotions that are really not your business, like we talked about. It's not really how they process that. And it could feel like it's anger. It could feel like it's frustration, where really it is part of their grieving process or their, expanding process as a person. And it's okay to just let that sit sometimes and it's certainly not to take it in as a criticism of you and your job and how you perform and did I articulate that properly? I don't know designers who aren't trying really hard to create a good communication with clients. It's just really difficult to communicate every single thing you're doing. You'd be on the phone every 5 minutes, and the bill would be double if you communicated, because you're designing when you're thinking. You're sitting there spacing out, looking at a wall. But you're really like, how am I going to do that? But that's part of the process.
Yeah, definitely I think it's having a clean business practice is like definitely a form of empathy for clients so that they can look back and go, okay, I was never maybe I wasn't paying every as high attention value as I might have, but I was never given wrong information.
Right.
And there's the form of empathy to yourself and your business where you should be fully compensated for those 10 hours that it took to find that light fixture. You should. Because you have to, or else you're gonna hate your job and you're gonna hate your clients and you're not gonna treat them the way that you want your practice to treat them.
It does absolutely do that. I mean, my family, I will tell you, my family owned a wine shop, and we used to do a free wine tasting every weekend. And we would have some people that came in like every weekend because we did like a food wine tasting, usually to pair everything correctly. And, we'd have people who'd literally come in and act like it was lunch. Like, it was just like and you start to really not like these people because they're taking advantage of you, you know? And that is the thing is when people are taking advantage of you, when you're not being compensated properly, when there is this boundary that is going then you start to not like your job, you start to not like that person. It really robs you of the ability to be that empathetic person because you start to sway how you feel about them. So I've seen that and experienced it firsthand. It really can muddy the waters and how you feel about people and the whole practice of it itself. I mean, we were doing it as a means to build community and bring in clients and bring in customers, but you know, you're always going to get some people who take advantage of you if you don't have some certain boundaries, you know?
So that's it's like we talked about the education side, right? What we need to do in our marketing to make sure that we're advising clients of why this process is valuable, why it's different. We talked about the compensation side where we need to be good to ourselves and make sure that we're participating in commerce for profit.
Yes.
We talked about the empathetic act of having a clean business practice is really, really helpful to clients. And I feel like that extends too to the vendors. I think that I just did this thing that I never fail this and I don't feel like I fully followed through. So it's on my list for today. But I feel like it's like sort of imperative that you send your vendors install photos just to say, like, look what you did. You had a big hand in this. You
Right.
bailed me out, or you had your own problems. Like sometimes a whole tri-state area will freeze, or sometimes there'll be a 3-day blackout or a blizzard or whatever people had to go through to make these products and get them to you. They had their own struggles to meet the timeline. So I think it's a good reminder to be empathetic to that side of your business too. So we've talked about how you need to be empathetic to
Love that you just said that, and I do not think that that is the norm in our industry. I think that we tend to think of the vendors as being this wealthy company that has but it boils down to people, and there are factory workers in that factory, and they are, sometimes generational. You go to we talked about when before we went to High Point, we had that conversation where you go to High Point, you're drinking champagne, you're having a canapé, and really they're there to sell product, and they're representing a whole factory behind them with guys in t-shirts and jeans who were working their butts off to pay for their own mortgage and their kids' dentist and all of the things that are real in their world, and we get this me versus them scenario in our heads, I think sometimes, and like we're all on the same team. We're all trying to, you know, pay for our bills and keep up with the economy and believe me, brands are hurting right now too. They're hurting right now. This is the tariffs are hurting them dramatically. They don't know how to respond to it. It changes all the time. Just the changes alone are costing our industry millions of dollars because they're having to adjust as they go, not knowing what's coming down the line. So they're like, should we change the prices? Should we eat it? How much do we eat it? When do we change the prices? Those meetings that are happening, the changes on the website that are happening, the email communications out to clients, the email communications out to vendors, it's all taking 10 times more with the time than it used to take because they're trying to respond all the time. And so that financial cost is a big burden right now for these companies. Like they're spending a tremendous amount of attention on just managing that process at the same time as retail not fully recovering since COVID. So they're like, who's our market really fully right now? And how do we service it to the best of our ability and keep our overhead going forward, like keep our team being paid, not having to result to layoffs or the things that they might have to do from financial perspective. So I really love that you said that. And I love that you were generous about it because I do also have designers who are like, I want to charge that at that brand for that photograph. And it's like, you have to remember, they're not going to make any money from that photograph either. Just like we're not making any money from that photograph. I mean, we're
Yeah.
hoping the client, but like legitimately, if they share it on social media, it doesn't mean like a million people came in and bought your sofa because it was in your design photo. Like, it might not have resulted in anything, any ROI from them other than they're proud of it and they wanna share it.
So easy with social, it's so easy just to tag them with social because you have I just can't even think of a when you wouldn't have the license to share your own work that you paid the photographer for. Of course, your license is gonna cover your own social use and tagging a brand, I'm pretty sure, mine does, but you uh, follow Linda Holt and learn how to take a good picture with your iPhone and just send that on over. You know what I mean? If you have a
Thoughtful.
licensing issue with just to your own rep, to your own,
Yeah.
to whoever you dealt with. Like some poor brand had a whole thing where sometimes the COM gets misplaced or something happens and it's hard for them to meet the deadline. And then you're like, "Oh gosh, I'm flying there." That's when you work in other markets, I work all over the country. So if I'm flying there, that's a big
That
install.
better be there.
So I have to press, I have to. And I'm not rude about it, but I do pepper them every other day and say, "Is it coming? Are you sure? Is it coming? What's it? Where is it now?"
The PTA.
We have to.
Yeah.
That's procurement.
You have a
That's
lot of professionals on the line waiting to do the install. I mean, there's a lot of ducks in the row and a lot of human beings and hours that need to be coordinated
it's how we
around that.
differ from the public. We're
Yeah,
not the public.
yeah,
We're not the public. So
no.
yeah, so when you pepper them like that, certainly that's when I really do wanna send them that iPhone shot to say, "Thank you. Sorry
Yes,
we had to pepper you. What the heck?"
yes, yes,
It's my
yes,
job.
it is.
I wanted to tell you another language thing I have that I think is empathetic to clients. I like to say, I could agree with you, and I would never say what I'm about to say if it weren't my actual job to say it. That's a preface that I'll make, and then I'll say, Do you think you wanna hear it, or do you think you wanna just kinda go with what you're saying?" 'Cause a lot of times clients have been thinking about their project for such a long time, and they've got something ingrained, and when I mean such a long time, sometimes it's like 8 years. So they might have a picture in their head that was retail already, so that's already 5 years, 3 years, 5 years behind what designers at this level are doing, and so they're thinking of this picture that's now to you 12 years old, and that we have peaked on that classic trend and that we're way on the down of that. And it's a matter of professional. This is a rigor thing too. Like sometimes you have to say the hard words and say, "I'm so excited about so many ideas you have for your space, and you are the expert on what you want, and I'm never going to try to veto what you want in the end, but you have hired me, and it is part of my job to tell you that I feel like this particular decision might not meet your goals for the following reason." And I don't know, I think it's important to do that, and I think that helps your clients, stretch out their investment
Well, trust
and
trust factor too. I mean, that's a huge you don't have to say that to them. You could just say, "Yeah, you buy it." And I think a lot of designers get stuck in that sometimes in the beginning too, because you just agree. They're the customer. We need to agree with them. But you're right. I mean, professional advice is professional advice, and sometimes that is not what they wanna hear. Like, when I go to my doctor and they're like, "You need to do this therapy," or something, I don't wanna hear that, but I gotta do it. It's part of what I gotta do. If I had physical therapy or something, it's just like we all have something that we're being told sometimes that is out of the boundaries of what we expect to hear, and that's not very easy to be handed that, you know? So I love that you have and I think that this is what you're saying is so important. I really want to reiterate this is to have these practiced conversations. I just read a book called Strong Ground by Brene Brown. I really love her. I don't know if you read any of her stuff, but it's a lot on leadership and how to have difficult conversations. Well, one of the things she actually has in there, and I encourage you to go even on ChatGPT and look this up, is Rumble conversations, and it's how to have difficult conversations in a better way. Breeds empathy and breeds understanding, and some of the conversations I really thought would be so great for these difficult conversations that designers have with clients, because it could be when the emotions are high. One of the things that she said, and I'll caveat this in a couple ways, because one of the things she said was like, what's the most generous interpretation of what just happened? Like, that is a very good Rumble conversation. Like, you want the client to be looking at what happened without the filter of being, blaming someone. You know what I mean? Like, is it that I am trying to steal all your money? Or is it that I am trying to give you the best solution? What is the most generous version of how we can look at how that happened, Or but there are ways to do it in the right way so that you're de-escalating and reminding people of their emotion in the process, or their part of the process. And one of the Rumble conversations was, the story I'm telling myself is, which is something that I think a lot of people, that's how you started. Like, so the story I'm telling myself is that you are, you know, um, you don't really understand what I want, and so you're just taking a stab at it. You know what I mean? That's what you could be saying, the story that, and you don't wanna do something like, "The story I'm telling myself is, you're an asshole who doesn't get me." You know what I mean? That's using it as a weapon versus using it so that they understand where you're coming from in the right way. I just encourage you all to look at Rumble conversations and how you can really practice having these different conversations that inevitably will be emotionally charged, and how you can de-escalate or even be curious in ways that you aren't really thinking. It's a practice, right? I mean, Shannon, like, you've done this over time, where you've come up with these ways that let the client off the hook, or let them be able to have the no, or let them be able to have understand the boundary in a different way. I mean, that is from years of practice.
Then
Y
being you can't do good work without letting your client be a little nervous, and
Right.
that can be really hard for empaths, and I definitely I mean, you are the expert on interior designers in our world, you definitely are, and but correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like a lot of designers are empaths.
I
So
do too. I do too. I
okay.
think absolutely, I think that designers are walking around with their hearts outside of their
Yes.
bodies,
So I
you
go
know?
to shows, like, we'll be on the showroom floor in a big, big market, and suddenly I find myself crying with a colleague who I've known, just a little, like, known in passing because we're crying about something that happened to somebody that we both know, just like whatever, but you see it everywhere. So a couple of the things that I think are so important is that we protect our clients from our own empathy with our clean business practice. We protect our own families by making sure we're taking care of ourselves. We take care of our vendors by remembering our empathy, even when it's our vendors. And also I think that one thing we haven't touched on is the construction team. I feel like if you are involved in new build like I am, or are involved in remodel, you really need to extend your empathy to the fact that these are also experts walking around. And there's this funny thing that happens, I think, where sometimes, you need when you're entering our industry, you really need the confidence of whatever gives you the confidence. Whatever your background is, you should be walking around with a little bit of ego, or else how are you spending these hundreds of thousands of dollars of your clients and knowing that you're really helping them? I mean, that's healthy, but you also need to say, wow, this person has been building cabinets for 25 years, and maybe they have something to impart to me that I could benefit from understanding better. And so maybe when I'm seeing a decision that I wasn't expecting, maybe I'm going to extend them the same grace that I hope my client would extend me if I had not fully communicated every tiny detail, and approach this with "Oh, so tell me about this piece of filler I wasn't expecting. I didn't expect to see the 3.5-inch filler here. What do you think? Why is that?" And then the answer might be, "Well, when you specified the hidden blah, 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 I had to blah, 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 or else it wouldn't operate." Or, the answer is probably some super high expert level thing if you're working with the team that is the right team for you.
Right, right.
Can't really make someone who doesn't have the skill set better, but you can't treat the people with the skill set as if they aren't experts because they don't have the letters after their name that you invested in getting. You can't do that. It
Right.
won't work out for you. It
No,
won't.
no,
And
no,
especially
and
every market
you
is
really should be a sponge. Part of that is, like, be a sponge. Be ready to learn everywhere you go.
correct. And how lucky to have their expertise, you know? And it's this superpower that I see so many designers walking around with of being the ability to read minds. It's none of your business also. Like, don't forget that at the end of the day, it helps you in some ways, but if you get that email that's like, "You sense a little bit of tension, but what they're saying is fine," let it be fine. Just
Right.
be fine.
Err on the side of, like,
Your minds.
I'm not digging in there, you
Or
know?
say, "We are pleased, thank you." Let it be fine. Don't
Right,
go, "Why do they just say that they are pleased? What they didn't say one thing about the blah, 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 and the blah, blah." No. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that. Don't put them in that position where they're feeling vulnerable, where they're having buyer's remorse, where they're looking at their empty coffers going, "Oh, did I do the right thing?" Or where they're walking through a house that they haven't had access to, you know, because it's a new build or whatever, and they're getting used to being in a new place, and there's a little bit of mourning that goes along with that for clients. And then also remember to extend all the empathy and all the grace to your team as well. If you know, every part of your team, your vendors, your everyone, your
yeah,
bookkeepers, everyone.
right,
So tell your story clearly in your marketing, educate your clients. What do you cost? Why are you good at this? How does this help them? What markets do you like to work in? Who are they? Who are you looking for? Who are you calling to you? Educate them that way. Educate them about the price of your offerings, how much they can expect to pay. You know, I can tell you the price of the last 5 kitchens we did. That's not a problem. As soon as someone calls me in a screening call, I make sure to get those numbers out there. You probably, if you audit your jobs, you might be able to tell them what a normal proposal might look like for different phases of design, however you break it up. That's an act of empathy to help people to have the knowledge before you're asking them to take some big leap with you.
right,
Scary,
right.
vulnerable place. And money is a scary, vulnerable place for a lot of people. And home is definitely a scary, vulnerable
Absolutely.
place.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. This was so great. I cannot thank you enough for coming on. And we're going to make sure everyone gets to your website and your Instagram so they can follow along with everything you do. You will not meet a more willing participant in our community. She's also on our board for interior design community. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. This has been so fantastic.
Thank you, Laurie. It's always such a pleasure. I learn so much every time. I love
Yay. All right. Goodbye.